Hi everyone and welcome. In this recording I'm going to be speaking about this upcoming Mercury Retrograde season, which begins on the 14th of January 2022 and lasts until February the 3rd, even though the effects of the Mercury Retrograde season, especially the more positive ones, if this is even susceptible to polarization, because as an astrologer I should be saying that there is no negative side of any retrograde, because ultimately it's about truth, it's about wisdom, it's about a different kind of life experience, and at the same time, with every single planet symbolism retrograde, well, it turns inwards, so it's self-reflection. It always teaches us something about ourselves, or in other cases, it might provoke us to reflect a truth which we may find uncomfortable. Now, of course, we have to begin with the symbolism of Mercury. As we all know, Mercury is the planet of the mind, the messenger of the gods, so it has to do with communication. It has to do with the flow of information, including within our bodies, quite physically as well, our neural activity, even though that is also the domain of Uranus, Mercury's higher octave. But in this Mercury retrograde season, Uranus is also a power player in the larger picture, so it's definitely included. And then it's also responsible with travels, it is also responsible with healing, even in a physical sense, like medical care, doctors, hospitals, because Mercury is the energy which kind of represents their knowledge, their mastery, and their ingenuity, because ultimately, especially in my opinion, every medical act has an improvisation part to it, where you just have to figure out how to fix that person's problem. Even if you have all the knowledge in the world, every single human being is different, their cases are different, their lifestyle is different, so that is also a very mercurial activity, to try and heal someone, or even to try advise someone. Also, when a planet goes retrograde, it is as closest to the Earth as it gets. So this is how the symbolism turns more inwards, because it has a greater psychological influence on us. Now, fortunately, Mercury is one of those planets who has many retrogrades throughout a year. And also, Mercury retrogrades don't last a long period of time, usually about 2-3 weeks. And it's always a needed and necessary break that helps us or inspires us to do everything with as in revise, rethink, redo, reevaluate, recalculate, replan. Of course, even rest. And very many times it does lead to a revolution, especially when Mercury is in a rather comfortable part of the sky in an air sign. And even though this can be a little bit more uncomfortable for us people, but the effects of the Mercury retrograde, so basically the conclusions and the outcome, is that much more important, revelatory, and it bestows clarity and a certain type of knowledge of the self. And in this case, because its retrograde begins in the sign of Aquarius, about others, about society, about the future, about our own hopes and dreams, about what is possible and not possible. And because in this specific Mercury retrograde season, Mercury will stand still in the sky, very, very close to Saturn, well, this will represent a kind of reality check for all of us. And also because Mercury squares Uranus along with Saturn when it begins its retrograde, it will definitely add a lot of clarity, a lot of momentum, a lot of progress to our own personal Saturn and Uranus square. Which means the big breakthrough that we need our lives personally, depending on our individual situations, where it is that we need to step out of our comfort zone, where it is that we need to break the old patterns, the old routines, the way we always used to live our lives basically. And this is where Uranus brings awareness. And that means that it pushes us out of our ignorance zone as well. It adds different layers, different personal dimensions. And when I say this, it is basically different point of view, different perspective to that which we already possess. So it perfects it, it refines it. It ultimately advantages us to have the understanding of what it is that we need to do to have that breakthrough, to accomplish stepping into the new, stepping into our ingenuity, authenticity, our real power, if that makes sense. And speaking about power, Mercury will also hold conversations with Pluto, so that will be so very revelatory in so many ways. And also, going back to the Saturn and Uranus square, Uranus is the planet of the future. It is the ruling planet of astrology, predictions, foresight, anticipating things, making scenarios, calculations, anything to do with that. So it will show us which part of our future plans is possible Saturn, which part of our future plans is, let's say, not advised because perhaps the conditions work against us, perhaps certain conditions in our lives are so very tough that Uranus cannot break through. It cannot be that wrecking ball in especially this period, the beginning of the year. So that might represent the wisdom that we need to have more patience. But for other people, it will actually deliver the grand plan, the grand design, the personal scheme of how exactly we're gonna step into our futures. And because this is also a powerful Aquarian energy and also a powerful Capricornian energy, this will definitely get things done. If we need certain connections in our lives, chances are this Mercury retrograde will guide us to them. Maybe for some people, before new connections enter their lives, there will be a lot of cord cutting, a lot of denouncing, if that even makes sense, certain old friendships or certain group of people who simply do not advantage them anymore. While for others, it will definitely present the map or the GPS route of how they will find their place in the world, perhaps the relevant people who they want to share something with, communities, returning back to their roots, especially for people who abandoned their culture of origin, their place of origin, their country. This Mercury retrograde might be the callback that they might need to return back home for any reason, even if it's just a shorter period of time. Now, also something important that needs to be mentioned, and this is specific to basically every Mercury retrograde season, regardless of which part of the sky it takes place. Well, Mercury rules technology, it rules the internet, it rules everything that has to do with electricity. So during a Mercury retrograde season, we might experience equipment failing us, software playing tricks on us, car breakdowns are very, very often, or any kind of transport breakdowns, delays or inconveniences in any travel plans. It is usually not a very good idea to buy new electronic equipment under a Mercury retrograde season, especially in this season, because Aquarius is all about technology, Aquarius is all about gadgets and new things, including, buying new electronic equipment. It is also not a very good idea to launch something new like a business, a website, a book, or whatever, it is also not a very good idea to make commitments, to sign contracts, to agree to anything, or also to disagree. For example, to terminate a contract prematurely, to end a job, to end a career, or anything like that. Mercury retrograde is always a time of contemplation, where the fact that we are usually confused is a positive thing because we ask the right questions. And perhaps, Mercury in Capricorn, we consult, we seek the advice of more experienced people, and that is always a plus. And many of us, and this is where including myself, sometimes are too caught up in our own personal dramas or pride, or we don't want to inconvenience others, so we don't ask for help, we just shut up, we don't seek anyone else's opinion. And during Mercury retrograde season, we might not have any other choice. Even if we just shut up, advice may come to us unsolicited. Now, after this being said, let's take a look at this Mercury retrograde season, key dates and times, and what exactly is going on in the sky. So on the 14th of January, Mercury stands still in the sky and prepares to go retrograde the next day. Whenever a planet is stationary, its symbolism is amplified, and usually its shadow expression is more highlighted. And when Mercury stands still in the sky on the 14th, well, it already holds a square with Uranus, its higher octave, and Uranus itself is also preparing to stand still. So both of these planets, mental energy, cerebral energy, the flow of information, and Uranus, the shocking truth, the shocking revelation, the kind of awareness that we just simply cannot ignore, well, these can be part of the theme immediately. So on the 14th already, this can represent communication, bad news, but don't understand it in a doomy and gloomy way, just inconvenience where whatever communication comes to you, well, it highlights that there is a problem and that problem needs to be solved. Or this can also represent the urgency where we might wake up to the fact, because Mercury is conjunct Saturn, not to the degree, but it's still a conjunction, that we don't have much time left. Maybe this is where it's matter of time. We thought that we had like 3 months to take care of something, and surprise, surprise, in 2 weeks something needs to be taken care of urgently. So it might shock us a little bit, it might unsettle it, it might scare us. And of course, this can also represent just an inward energy where we feel a little bit anxious, we feel a little bit unsettled, that we waited for so long. So like it or not, we make the choice that we are doing it now. We are starting our efforts to fix the problems, to overcome our limitations, to at least try and attempt to give greater stability and groundedness to our lives in a very practical sense. Capricorn, after all. And Aquarius is also very practical, very down to earth, very cerebral. It's not dreams, fantasies, it's not the Neptunian realm. So this is real life. And of course, as uncomfortable as the Saturn might be, I do believe that this Mercury retrograde season, especially the beginnings of 14th, 15th, is gonna act like a very strong impulse and motivation, because as Uranus, its higher octave, also starts standing still, that means that it starts getting the upper hand. Until now, all through 2021, Saturn had the upper hand. Saturn, laws, rules, the tradition, limitations. You cannot do this, or you have to do this the usual way, the classic way. Try and innovate all you want, but the customs, the traditions, the collective consciousness, how things always used to be, including in very palpable ways like legislation, laws, the coercive force of the state, of the government, of, 3D, posed an impassable limitation where we were forced to still do it the old-fashioned way if we wanted to do something. Now everything changes because Uranus goes very, very strongly against that. And as soon as the North Node touches Taurus, Uranus will be greatly activated. So basically Saturn is in disadvantage. And we will see this playing out on the world stage and also in our individual lives. And the most basic expression of this energy where we just do not believe anymore with every fiber of our beings, our inner voice or our mind, our higher self just tells us the limitations don't matter anymore because we're doing it one way or another. And the collective expression, well, rebellion, that's very simple. Just let's take a look at what is going on in several parts of the world, and basically that's it. People had enough. Change is needed. The old laws, traditions, customs, and this is where including the unwritten rules and customs of society, so to speak, that which isn't legal, but it's like the normal, the expectations of society, the standard Saturn, those are being demolished, burned away. And with this very strong Uranus, the tides turn so very quickly because that which was normal until now is not even gonna be perceived and seen with tolerant eyes. So collectively speaking, this will strongly stir up the spirits. And collectively speaking, this Mercury retrograde season, especially in Aquarius, well, it can represent big truths coming out accidentally, like email leaks, information leaks, etc. And at the same time, it can mean hacking, cybernetic warfare. But even though that is a criminal act, so to speak, if it's like a big dirty secret coming out at the same time as a side effect, well, you can imagine that it will strongly stir up spirits. And like always, Mercury can also be perceived as, let's say, Loki, so the god of thieves. During a Mercury retrograde season, we must be very careful, especially in air signs. We need to be careful with promises, we need to be careful with small prints when signing contracts, we have to be careful with scams and, everything that has to do with deception, thievery basically, on the internet. So if you get messages, text, DMs with, links and offers and you've won or congratulations and stuff like that, be sure not to click it. So protect yourself, protect your money, protect your devices, because that is definitely within the theme. On the 17th or 18th of January, the nodes of the moon finally shift and enter the Taurus and Scorpio axis. And as I said, that will strongly energize Uranus. And of course, as Mercury re-retrogrades into the sign of Capricorn on the 26th of January, it will start to hold a trine with the North Node in Taurus. So that could be a very strong cerebral brainstorming energy when we come up, or basically karma, North Node, offers us a means, methodology, a person, advice, or whatever fits our individual situations for our future financial solutions. That can be a breakthrough energy, but only the plan, only the blueprint is offered at that time. It is up to us to do something with it later on as Mercury goes direct and goes through its shadow path and holds that trine once again with the North Node in the sign of Taurus. Now, of course, there is a small warning here, because we must not forget that the sign of Taurus, especially 26, 27 degrees, I'm not 100% certain the exact degree, it holds the star Algol, the demon star, the malevolent energy. So whatever takes place in our lives, we must not allow greed, we must not allow avarice to influence us in any way, shape or form. So we must be very, very careful with any kind of excesses. Even if, let's say, and I'm very sure that for some very, very few people, this Mercury trining the North Node in Taurus will mean that they'll win the lottery or they'll receive an inheritance which is beyond their wildest dreams. But this is where we're called to be diligent, to be dignified, because would we make the mistake to fall into Algol's charm, so to speak, greed, or in more biblical terms, to serve Mammon, nothing good will come out of it in the next 18 years of our lives. And also, when Mercury trines the North Node in Taurus, that can be really, really good news with advancing out of this COVID situation. According to my personal calculations, that might be a moment when we might receive good news that there is a solution, we're getting there, it's not gonna last forever, etc., etc. But of course, that is all controversial because good news can be seen as such for a person, and for another person it can be just a conspiracy and they'll turn against it. But this is the Uranian period that we're experiencing. But even before that, on the 23rd of January, Mercury Retrograde will conjunct meet the Sun in the sky, in the sign of Aquarius still. So that might be a really good period to figure out our alliances, who our friends are, what our friends are doing in their lives, with their future plans. Are we part of their plans? Are they part of our plans? Do we want to keep our connections, or do we want to change? This might not be the most comfortable energy because the Sun combusts everything it touches, similarly a little bit to what Mars does, just that the Sun is not willpower, the Sun is the light of our consciousness, so it is beyond will. And whenever Mercury meets the Sun in any way, shape or form, it is an energy of prophecy, it is an energy of clarity. Mercury retrograde, old friends from the distant past, old social connections might contact us, might return in our lives. There might be offers coming from the past which we might not even have expected ever. If we had any work done in the past and we just left it as such, maybe we didn't get any reward for it. And when I say reward, not necessarily money or financial rewards, recognition, honors, a good feedback or anything like that. It might simply out of nowhere return back to our lives. And at the same time, with Mercury retrograde, in this instance being a very karmic energy, because it is in the same part of the sky as Saturn after all, if we have hidden enemies, let's say, in our circle of friends, acquaintances, social connections, etc., it might reveal it to us. Or basically the people will just reveal themselves by what they say or speak. If you have any activity on social media, the internet, writing, public speaking, sharing information with other people, the 23rd of January and after might also be a period when you harvest one way or another fruits of your labor from the past. And when I say past, it's usually recent past, so last year or something like that. Then on the 26th of January, Mercury retrogrades back into the sign of Capricorn. And that is the moment. Capricorn is an earth sign, initiatory earth sign, cardinal earth sign. So on one hand, something major information-wise or informational in nature, like communication, like news, like big headlines, breaking news, stuff like that, or something being discovered. dug up from the recent past, so something to do with COVID or power, authority, finances, money, the price of oil and fuel and stuff like that, is gonna be revealed, so to speak. So some communication information is coming collectively, so to speak. But at the same time, individually, everything that kind of happened in our lives during Mercury's retrograde in Aquarius, now that might be manifesting. So that might be the moment where we will know what to do practically, physically. For example, for many people, this Mercury retrograde will be changing careers, changing jobs, changing homes, changing houses, changing something that was a strong and steady structure in their lives. So this might be the moment when we decide to do it, to start doing it, start the work practically, physically. So, for example, for some people, during Mercury's retrogradation in Aquarius, maybe they went and searched for jobs, maybe they got interview calls, maybe they had certain options, opportunities enter their lives, and they thought it through, they consulted with other people, with their friends, with family, or a counselor, or whatever the individual situation is. And it is this time when they will start actually going to the interview and experiencing what is possible, what is not. Do they like it? Do they not like it as much? Because we must not forget that Venus is also retrograde in the sign of Capricorn, and when Mercury enters in this part of the sky, Venus is still retrograde there. So it is not just a cerebral energy now, it's also an emotional energy, value system. Is it worth it? Is it worth my time? Is it worth my sacrifice? Does this benefit anyone in an emotional way? Does it make someone happy? Does it make me happy? Does it satisfy me? Can I commit to this long term, or am I not sure of myself yet? So these are the themes that we might be experiencing. Then on the 29th of January, Mercury will meet Pluto in the sky for the second time. So that is truth, that is us already having something to work with, an inner truth or information or clarity. So we are already starting to make the decisional process of what it is that we want to do next. May it be regarding our jobs, careers, commitment to a person, anything that is basically a massive structure in our lives that we are changing, rethinking, revising, or Venus retrograde, discarding it totally and embracing something new. And if all of this wasn't enough, on the 29th, Mercury conjunct Pluto. So again, I must highlight Mercury conjunct Pluto. We are aware of the truth. May it be an inner truth, may it be something about ourselves, something very hard to look at, or an information that we received during this Mercury retrograde season. For example, the job that we wanted to apply for is really not worth it money-wise, for example. Or our partner really did commit an act of infidelity, but they apologize, so we are processing. How do we truly feel about that? And when Mercury meets Pluto, we already know if we can forgive or if we cannot forgive, or what are our own personal terms and conditions. Of course, this is just an example, because Pluto with Venus retrograde and also Mercury in the picture, for many people, well, it will mean infidelity, because Capricorn with Juno in it is commitment, long-term commitment, marriage, partnership, or anything like that, including business-wise. Maybe the big contract that has entered someone's life, business-wise again, after rethinking and analyzing it, it has unacceptable terms and conditions. So, Mercury conjunct Pluto, time for renegotiation. Or another example, a project, a work, something that you have been working on. Maybe something ingenious, Uranus, something creative, Sun meeting Mercury, is more or less finished, but you see something that you don't like or something changes and you quickly start adding the finishing touches. But, again I say the 29th and after of January, it's not an easy energy, especially collectively speaking, because Pluto conjunct Mercury squares Eris in Aries, cardinal energy, initiation, something starts, but Eris is the bigger power player here, so that is rebellious, that is disruptive, that is anger. And when Eris squares Pluto, a very strong psychological energy, a truth or a wound that we even find it hard to look at. When something adds salt to that, it's gonna blow up, it's gonna be disruptive. There is gonna be big things happening in the world at that time. Of course, rebellious of nature, but Mars is also in the sign of Capricorn. Venus is standing still in the sky in the sign of Capricorn. So that can mean strong battle, assertion, even militaristic energy, even, people versus centralized power, but this time in a physical sense, where police forces battling with protesters and not so nice things happen, but at the same time that is Pluto. It shows us the truth. Maybe it shows protesters the truth that centralized power has no plan to give any further rights or any compromise to people. So this is a very strong clash. And again, the symbolism of Eris, sovereignty, individual rights, everyone's voice matters and everyone's situation matters, even the homeless, even the most disadvantaged people matter. And Venus, again, standing still in the sky, preparing to go direct. We already know our truth. Our feelings are crystal clear. We know what we need to do. And Mars in the same part of the sky, that's passion, that's strong willpower. Mars in the sign of Capricorn is an exaltation. So that is my way or the highway. I'm gonna achieve it in any way, shape or form. If it takes ambition, time, energy, any sacrifice, I'm willing to do it. And if you put this in a collective context, well, perhaps it's not the most peaceful of times that await us. And also Venus with Pluto and this Mercury, financial energy. What is going to happen from a financial perspective? Something without a doubt is going to take place in the banking industry. Something is going to be revealed about material situation, financial situation of certain countries collectively, globally, or who is responsible for the financial losses of the pandemic. And there will be an attempt to make that power player, because it's not a person, obviously, a country or a group of people or the WHO, responsible legally and money. Maybe they will owe compensation, or this might be the attempt behind this. So a lot of things are going to be stirred up. And also Mercury conjunct Pluto, very hard to look at truth. This might represent that certain people totally lost their livelihoods, and the price of food and the basic necessities, North Node in Taurus, is so very expensive that they are literally condemned to death. But of course, this is where Eris steps in and says, no, we cannot accept this and allow this to happen in this day and age, because physical reality, the actual reality, there is enough food and resources in the world for every single human being to have. And if it's just greed or certain traditions, Saturn, is stopping us from helping in a humanitarian way everyone who is truly in need. Also the symbolism of Aquarius, also Uranus in the sign of Taurus. Money, resources, food, nourishment, Taurus, has to be shared equally. Uranus, the planet of equality. So this will represent a massive humanitarian effort. And people will fight for this if needed. This is also where the price of fuel, oil, gas, anything that has to do with energy source, Pluto, is gonna skyrocket. So that will also be a massive shock ultimately. And this is also a period when for a short window of time, the price of real estate, land, property, etc., is gonna totally destabilize. And again, the symbolism of both Aries and Uranus. For some people, it will be a once-in-a-lifetime lucky opportunity to buy something incredibly cheap. And for other people, especially those who gathered a lot of money to make a purchase in 2022, they will find it totally impossible because the market and even the basic rules, so to speak, from a financial and economic perspective, which regulate this area of commerce, so to speak, is gonna be in total chaos, unpredictable totally. And last but not least, naturally, this also refers to relationships, including romantic relationships, because Venus is there, and this was the theme of Venus retrograde season. Commitments of any kind. So for some people that's romantic or partnership commitment. And it's not a coincidence that both Mercury and Venus are retrograde, even for a short period of time, at the same time in the same sign. And ultimately, even if not together, they will hang out with Pluto, so that Pluto changes life forever. This month and next month is gonna be a month of profound, unexpected, and 180-degree changes for many of us. May it be career-wise, may it be materially, may it be romantically, or may it be our own relationship with the self, our own modus vivendi going as deep as that. So when both Venus will be stationary and Mercury stationary, that's when something will sink in deep and we will just know what we want, what we deserve, and the opposite of that, what we do not accept, what we cannot allow, what we cannot tolerate. Because ultimately, Pluto, as I said earlier, when it touches something, that's like shedding off old skin. That skin has to fade away forever. It will never ever be the same. It's like the legend of the goddess Ishtar. She had to descend into the underworld. She had to strip herself of all her royalty, all her magic, all her power. She turned basically into nothing. Of course, she emerged. The promise of regeneration that Pluto also offers. But when she emerged from the underworld, when she took back her throne, including her power, her magic, her royalty, everything, she was still not the same person, symbolically speaking, goddess, because what she witnessed and the transformation, the pain that she went through, changed her forever. And we ourselves, both individually and collectively alike, are going to be Ishtars. Ishtar, again, goddess of love and beauty. Venus for the Sumerians. Venus retrograde in Capricorn, meeting Pluto for the third and final time. In March, we will never ever be the same again after this. And also collectively speaking. So this is where our normality changed so much that what we used to have in our lives, and including our old life stories, our old identity, even our old psychological setup, Capricorn, after all, the top of the sky, our backbone, even psychologically, with Pluto in the picture, it will not be the same again. So either we reinvent ourselves or we will be lost all throughout 2022, especially in April when a lot is gonna happen. Eclipse, the meeting of Neptune and Jupiter, the meeting of Jupiter, Venus, and Neptune, Venus, a lot, and Mars will also make very, very strong key connections. So I strongly advise and suggest to everyone that during this Mercury retrograde season, we really contemplate, think as deeply as we can, and truly embrace our true soul level values, because change is here, destiny is knocking at the door, and ready or not, it comes. And also, there's no going back. Once we made our choice, that's final. And especially if this Venus retrograde along with the Mercury retrograde triggers your life from a romantic perspective, love, and anything that has to do with partnerships, know that there's no going back. So be careful what you do, especially if it's a separation, an ending, a divorce, which is very possible because Pluto. And also, if you accept and commit to something long term, be very careful to know yourself, to know your feelings, to know what your soul wants, and also what your soul can never accept. This isn't the time for big compromises. This is the time for ultimate truth and basically clarity. Pluto is also power. Do we allow, and who do we allow to have power over us, and vice versa? The big changes that are coming, and we are 50% co-authors of that, cannot be undone very easily in the next 18 years or so. And finally, as a bonus, I also asked for divine guidance of what the universe might suggest to us that we do or not do under this Mercury retrograde season. And the tarot cards are the Magician, the Two of Coins reversed, the Hangman reversed, and the World card. And this is such a beautiful energy. The universe tells us that the karmic, or better said, the evolutionary intent of this Mercury retrograde is to prove to us personally and collectively that mind over matter is more real than we could have ever imagined. So what we are thinking, our mindset, our way of thinking, even the chatter of our minds, whatever we speak, whatever we affirm, and how we speak about ourselves will determine our reality. And also the Magician, Mercury. Certain people who will enter in our lives, doesn't matter if from the distant past or totally new, will be a valid reflection of who exactly we are. Sometimes the mirror is not so relevant. Sometimes we can only see ourselves in the eyes of another person. So whatever happens during this Mercury retrograde, it will say a lot about us. And if many people, through their own philosophical journeys, have asked sometimes what the universe, what their creator thinks about them or feels towards them, of course, understand this in a philosophical way, you might get the answer now. The Two of Coins reversed. This is literally a Capricornian energy. Yes, some people briefly will lose all control and stability of their lives, materially speaking, livelihood, job, income, house. Maybe for some people this is also health. Briefly, it will be like a reset, like a moment when almost literally you have nothing and neither can you see the future in any way, shape or form. But that moment will lead to the Hangman reverse. That will be the true awakening of what exactly you need to do to live the life that you always wanted. For some people, life has to collapse materially because this is material energy, so not necessarily psychological, so not dark night of the soul and traumas and strictly materially as an income, money, contract, job, house, wherever it is that you get your income from, it might collapse for a brief time, for example, like 2 weeks maybe, but that will be like a personal reset for you to achieve that which is a much, much, much better and more authentic source of income for you. So the universe says, if that might happen to you personally, don't panic, don't fear, because it's really good. It's leading to the World card, making life your own. And another big advice, right now, even if it looks that way, the world, as in anything that has to do with the outside, is not your enemy. It might seem that way, it might look that way because of the mass psychosis and the paranoia and the pandemic and the doom and gloom. It might seem that way, but it's really, really not. It's actually the opposite. The world and life, reality itself, was never as fertile as this ever during our lifetimes. So if we want to plant seeds of intentions, this is the time to actually plant them, because they will grow, and their growth was never as certain and as promising and as divinely guided as it is now. So this is truly the time to hope, and this is truly the time when a miracle is not just something that we read in fantasy books, but we will experience it in our lives, especially if we truly need it, and especially if our future and our well-being depends on it. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. I wish everyone a lot of strength, a lot of resilience, and the universe to truly deliver you good friends into your life to help you make it through this Mercury retrograde season with your chin held up high, and with the feeling that life and reality itself, for perhaps the first time ever, it is truly your playground. You are meant to be here. You are meant to experience. And sometimes, as I said, life should be just the tool to get you where you need to be from a either psychological or spiritual perspective. Many blessings to everyone. Until next time, bye for now.